All right, let's go.
Something is filling the vacuum of space right now. Empty space is not empty. Empty space is not empty. Right now, between every star in the galaxy, between every atom in your body, between every particle physicist has ever measured, there is something. Not nothing. Something. A seething, invisible medium that carries energy, has measurable effects, and may be the most fundamental substance in the entire universe. Scientists have a name for it today: the quantum vacuum, the zero-point field, dark energy. For 2,000 years before that, they had a different name: ether. They said it was the invisible medium filling all of space, the substance light waves traveled through, the way ocean waves travel through water, the thing that connected everything to everything else. They were laughed out of physics. Their idea was declared dead, killed by a single experiment in 1887 that every physics student learns about to this day. Here is what nobody tells you about that story. The idea never actually died. It changed shape, it got new names, and the most advanced physics of 2026 is describing something that sounds remarkably like what the ancient philosophers were pointing at all along. Stay with this. The original idea, where ether came from. The idea starts with Aristotle, 4th century BC. The ancient Greeks had identified 4 elements: earth, water, fire, air. Aristotle said there was a 5th. He called it the quintessence, the 5th essence. It was the substance that filled the celestial realm beyond the moon, pure, unchanging, not subject to the decay and corruption of the 4 earthly elements. It was the medium through which the stars and planets moved. This was not mysticism at the time. It was the best physics of the era. You needed something for the celestial bodies to move through. Empty void made no sense if things could travel across it. Something had to be there. The idea survived the Greeks, survived the Middle Ages. Then in the 17th century, Christian Huygens gave it a scientific purpose: light. Huygens was certain light was a wave. He had proof. Waves interfere with each other. Light interferes with itself. Waves need a medium to travel through. Water waves need water. Sound waves need air. Light waves need something. That something was ether, the luminiferous ether, light-bearing ether. A medium so subtle it could fill all of space, so rigid it could carry transverse waves at 300,000 kilometers per second, so non-resistant it did not impede the motion of the planets at all. James Clerk Maxwell built his entire theory of electromagnetism around it. The equations describing how electric and magnetic fields propagate through space, Maxwell's equations, were originally conceived as describing disturbances in the ether. In 1864, he wrote directly that the electromagnetic medium is the substance that fills all space, and that all electromagnetic phenomena are produced by its motion. The greatest physicist of the 19th century said ether was real. It was the medium through which light traveled, and he built the equations that led directly to Einstein using it as the substrate. Then came the experiment that killed it.
The experiment that killed Aether, and why the story's more complicated than you were told. 1887, Cleveland, Ohio. Albert Michelson and Edward Morley built the most sensitive interferometer ever constructed. Its purpose was to detect the Aether wind. The logic was simple. If Aether fills all of space and Earth moves through it, then light traveling in the same direction as Earth's motion should move slightly faster relative to Earth than light traveling perpendicular to it. Just as a boat moving downstream reaches its destination faster than one crossing the current. The difference would be tiny, but the Michelson-Morley interferometer was sensitive enough to detect it. They ran the experiment, rotated the apparatus, repeated it at different times of year in different orientations. The result was the same every time. Nothing. No difference. Zero Aether wind detected. This was one of the most famous null results in the history of science. Physics textbooks declared the luminiferous Aether dead. Einstein's special relativity arrived in 1905 and explained why the speed of light is the same in all directions for all observers. No aether required. Space and time bend instead. The medium was abolished. The void was declared truly empty. Except, Einstein himself never said space was empty. What special relativity abolished was the idea of an absolute fixed aether, a stationary medium that everything moved through. It did not say space had no properties. It said space itself had no preferred frame. In 1920, Einstein gave a lecture at Leiden University where he said directly, and this is his actual statement, according to the general relativity, space without aether is unthinkable. For in such space, there would not only be no propagation of light, but also no possibility for existence of standards of space and time. Einstein declared aether dead in 1905, then said space without it was unthinkable in 1920. He had replaced one kind of aether with something more subtle, space-time itself.
The quantum vacuum, the ether that physics actually accepts. Quantum field theory is the most accurate scientific theory ever produced. Its predictions match experiment to 12 decimal places. And what it says about empty space is extraordinary. There is no such thing as true emptiness. What we call the vacuum, the absence of particles, is actually the lowest energy state of a quantum field, not nothing, a field, a background structure permeating all of space. And this field is not quiet, it seethes. Quantum mechanics says that energy and time are related by Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You cannot have zero energy and zero uncertainty simultaneously. So even in the ground state of a quantum field, the energy is not zero. It fluctuates continuously, everywhere. These fluctuations are called zero-point energy, and they are real, not theoretical. Measurable. The Casimir effect demonstrates it directly. Place two uncharged metal plates extremely close together in a vacuum. The space between them is too small for most wavelengths of vacuum fluctuations to fit. Fewer fluctuations exist between the plates than outside them. The pressure difference pushes the plates together, a measurable force produced by the pressure of fluctuations in empty space. This has been measured in the laboratory many times. The quantum vacuum pushes things. Empty space exerts force. Physicist Robert Laughlin, a Nobel Prize winner, stated this directly. He wrote that the modern concept of a vacuum is one of the most dramatic examples of the triumph of the concept in modern physics. The vacuum is not empty space. It is a medium, an ether that is relativistic and quantum mechanical. He called it a relativistic ether. The word is back, used by a Nobel Prize winner in a peer-reviewed paper. The Higgs Field, the ether that gives you mass. In 2012, CERN announced the discovery of the Higgs boson, the particle that had been theorized since 1964. Its discovery made headlines worldwide. Peter Higgs and François Englert received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2013. What the headlines mostly did not explain clearly is what the Higgs boson actually is. It is the vibration of a field, the Higgs field, a field that permeates every point in space in the universe, completely, uniformly. You are inside it right now. Every particle with mass that has ever existed, every electron, every quark, every proton gets its mass through interaction with this field. Without the Higgs field, those particles would have zero mass. They would travel at the speed of light. Atoms could not form. Chemistry could not happen. You could not exist. Physicist Frank Wilczek, another Nobel laureate, literally wrote a book about this. Its title is The Lightness of Being, Mass, Ether, and the Unification of Forces. Not a metaphor in the title, he directly called the Higgs field a form of aether. The Higgs field is an all-pervading medium that fills every point in space and gives matter its most fundamental property. The ancient philosophers said the quintessence filled all of space and was the fabric of reality. The Higgs field fills all of space and is what makes matter real.
Dark energy, the ether that is pushing the universe apart. 71% of everything in the universe is something physicists call dark energy. It is what is causing the universe to expand at an accelerating rate. It acts like a pressure built into the fabric of space itself. The more space expands, the more dark energy exists because the energy density of the vacuum does not dilute as space grows. It is a property of space itself rather than something sitting inside space. This is almost exactly what the 19th century ether theorists described, a medium whose properties are intrinsic to space, a substance that cannot be removed from space because it is space, not something in the vacuum, a property of the vacuum. The cosmological constant, Einstein's original term for this energy, is what dark energy mathematically corresponds to. Einstein introduced it in 1917 and later famously called it his greatest blunder. He introduced it to keep the universe static. When Hubble showed the universe was expanding, Einstein removed it. Then, in 1998, Saul Perlmutter, Brian Schmidt, and Adam Rees discovered the expansion of the universe is accelerating. The cosmological constant came back. They received the Nobel Prize in 2011. The DESI survey, which has mapped 15 million galaxies and quasars, released results in 2025, suggesting dark energy may not be a fixed constant. It may be varying, weakening slightly over time, an ether-like medium with dynamics. If dark energy is real and the observational evidence that something is driving cosmic acceleration is overwhelming, then the universe is full of something, not empty. Something with energy density, something with properties, something filling every cubic centimeter of space that ever existed or ever will exist. The 19th century called it ether. Current physics calls it the vacuum energy of the cosmological field.
Quantum gravity and the structure of space. What if space itself is the medium? Loop quantum gravity is one of the two leading attempts to unify general relativity with quantum mechanics. It proposes that space itself is not continuous, not smooth, not infinitely divisible. At the Planck scale, 10 to the minus 35 meters, space is made of discrete quantized units, tiny loops of gravitational field woven together into a fabric, a spin network. Space is not the container that things sit inside. Space is made of something, has a structure at the smallest scale, is itself a kind of medium with properties that determine how things move through it. This is not the Victorian ether. There's no fixed absolute frame. Lorentz invariance is preserved. The features that killed the original ether are absent, but the core intuition of the ether theorists, that space is not nothing, that it has structure, that it is a medium with physical properties rather than an empty passive backdrop, that intuition is precisely what modern quantum gravity is building its mathematics on. In string theory, the extra dimensions, 6 additional spatial dimensions, compactified at the Planck scale, give spacetime a rich internal geometry that particles interact with. The geometry of these hidden dimensions determines the physical constants, the mass of the electron, the strength of gravity, the charge of a proton, properties of matter determined by the properties of the medium it exists within. The medium is real, it just does not have a single agreed mathematical description yet.
What if they were never wrong? Here's the hook from the beginning of this video. Empty space is not empty. This is not a poetic statement. It is the experimentally confirmed position of modern physics. The quantum vacuum seethes with zero-point energy. The Casimir effect measures it. The Higgs field fills every point in the universe. The cosmological constant represents energy built into the fabric of space itself. Dark energy is real and accelerating the expansion of the universe. Loop quantum gravity says space has a discrete structure at the smallest scale. The 19th century ether theorists were wrong about the specific model. They were wrong about the fixed absolute frame. They were wrong about the specific mechanism by which light waves travel. But the deepest intuition, that space is not nothing, that it has properties, that there is something rather than nothing filling the void between things, turns out to be exactly correct. Aristotle said the fifth element filled all of space. Maxwell said light waves moved through a medium pervading the universe. Einstein said space without a medium was unthinkable. Wilczek called the Higgs field an ether and a Nobel Prize-winning framework. Laughlin called the quantum vacuum a relativistic ether in a peer-reviewed paper. The word keeps coming back because the intuition it points to keeps turning out to be right. The ether was never buried. It was just being redefined, slowly, by the most rigorous science in history, into something far stranger and more precise than anyone in ancient Greece or Victorian England could have imagined. Empty space has energy. Empty space has structure. Empty space gives mass to matter. Empty space is accelerating the entire universe. They asked what fills the void. It turns out the void fills everything. Subscribe to Cosmic Hives. See you in the next one.